We are the Minnesota Conference United Church of Christ. From Williams to Sherburne, from Grand Marais to Graceville, we are bound in covenant to be Christ's church in the world. From ordinations and installations to local church discernment and global partnerships, we engage in the work of Christ within our church buildings and outside our church walls. Together, we experience the cost and joy of discipleship, the pain and the promise of being Christ's church in challenging times. No one church, no one ministry, no one leader stands alone in this community of faith that is the Minnesota Conference United Church of Christ. Together, we are stronger than we could ever be apart. Together, we are Christ's church.
To be an accompaniment with our ministries and our churches and all of those who put flesh on our ministry together in this place called the Minnesota Conference. Everywhere where we are doing ministry, these are challenging times because the world is shifting all around us and things are not as they once were for us as church. One of the most wonderful signs of new life and generosity that I've seen in the Minnesota Conference in this last year has been the way that the conference, as local churches and individuals, have gotten behind Tom and Monica Little to support their global mission appointment to East Timor.
So Global Ministries is the mission board of the United Church of Christ and the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. It's an ecumenical ministry where we partner with churches and church organizations around the world. Our appointment is with our partner in East Timor, the Protestant Church of East Timor, there to support their ministries, both in pastoral ministries, in my own case, and in healthcare, in Monica's case.
There's a small primary care clinic that's been there for about 25 years, and Timorese people run the clinic, a small group of Timorese women and one gentleman, and so I will be supporting them in their ministry, providing primary care. The clinic really serves a lot of functions in the community.
I feel like the church in any time and place is called to accompany the poor, is called to be with people who are oppressed, people who are experiencing poverty and injustice, and to accompany them in their own ministry and their own journey toward liberation and freedom.
People can support our ministry by tuning into what we're doing in East Timor. We're going to be connected on a weekly basis through social media. I want people to remember that we're going as a family. We have 2 children. Hannah is 12 and Simon is 6, and Simon was born in East Timor, so he's really going back home.
I think an important way that people can support our ministry is to recognize that it's an extension of your ministry, that we are representatives of local churches, the Minnesota Conference, the wider United Church of Christ. We are representing you.
Another sign of new life in the Minnesota Conference is what's happening at Pilgrim Point Camp.
Pilgrim Point is, first of all, a ministry of the Minnesota Conference of the United Church of Christ. So our decisions, our choices, and our evaluation have to do with filtering it all through the core values and the main ideas of our conference, as well as camp's core values. We formed a task force between members of the Minnesota Conference and members of Wayzata Community Church that were related to their camp. Because as their camps grew and our camps grew, we were bumping into each other on the calendar. The result of all of that task force work was that they found a new site near McGregor, Minnesota, where they're able to have a longer calendar year, as are we. We parted as friends, and we are very excited about their new ministry, as well as additional time for our ongoing ministry at camp. We have some new camps coming up this summer that we hope will be ongoing. We have a young adult, emerging adult week. We also have a deaf family camp for families who have members who are deaf or hard of hearing. We have a Camp Awesome, which will focus on families who have members, regardless of age, on the autism spectrum. We will also have a second Taizé retreat, the same as the one we've already held, that happened in May, where we worship 3 times a day. We're called to worship by the ringing of bells. We spend time in community and prayer and singing. We also have an intergenerational mission week and a youth mission week. We tried this last summer and it was wonderful, and we're doing 2 of them this year. So those are just some of the new things that are happening with this extra time that we have, and our hope is to grow programs that are ongoing for summers to come.
Pilgrim Point Camp is a part of our ministry in the conference, and I think it's just wonderful that it's expanding and growing and strengthening and shining. I would say another wonderful example of new life and boldness is that we have a new ministry connection in Buffalo.
We have a new faith community, and it's called United Faith Community. They are out of Buffalo, Minnesota. So this community met with us, and as per our process, they met with the executive committee on the Committee on Ministry, who recognized them as an upcoming faith community. They worship regularly. They have faith formation regularly, and they're already engaged in the community. This ministry it's exciting because it's new. They are entrenched in UCC. They see themselves as very progressive, and we're excited to be working with them and walking with them. We have St. Paul Church on Summit in St. Paul, but we also have Zor in Chaska. St. Paul, they worship on average 140 people. Zor worships on average 25 people. Yet both are intentionally engaged in intergenerational worship and faith formation. Another example is up in Sandstone. Now, this is a church that averages worship 30 people. But at their last event, they had 50 people participating. This is the missional base beyond the walls. They were able to raise enough money to fill 11,000 meals. You know, we use the phrase the millennials. They're looking for what comes after the closing hymn and what comes after the benediction. You know, that we live out Christ loved us first, and therefore we respond in love. We can look at Robbinsdale United Church of Christ. This is a congregation who has identified themselves as a sanctuary church, as a denomination of covenant. You know, what I've always encouraged my own congregations when I've served to be open to the possibilities. We don't know what they all are. What happens at 122 West Franklin, that's the conference office. And we work with and serve with and are served by one another in covenant and mutuality in community.
One of the places in the life of the conference that we're really called upon to be more creative and flexible has to do with authorizing ministers and with placing people in our churches, with working with churches in search and call to call their clergy.
The distribution of our churches in Minnesota reflects the demographics of population about 100 years ago. Most of our churches are, 70 to 150 years old. Churches also are experiencing lots of transitions. When their pastor retires, they go into sticker shock, realizing what compensation guidelines call for in terms of clergy compensation. Yeah, one of the significant trends that we're seeing in ministry is how pastoral positions, church pastoral positions, are becoming increasingly part-time, and I think that that's going to continue. In terms of connecting non-parish clergy or authorized ministers who are not serving churches to each other and to the ministries of the conference, that's an ongoing challenge. The numbers of those people are increasing substantially year to year. In fact, the Committee on Ministry work is such that with the number of chaplains coming through needing endorsement or looking for a first call that might entail chaplaincy, we're really intentional about trying to get chaplains to serve on the Committee on Ministry. There are 2 topics, I think, that are sort of hot topics for the Committee on Ministry at the present time. Well, actually, I can think of 3. One is how we can be more supportive and connectional with local churches. But the 2 principal concerns that the Committee on Ministry has at the present time, at least in my estimation, are how to make boundary training, on matters of power and boundaries for authorized ministers accessible, affordable, with appropriate content. And the other issue that I think is kind of a hot button issue is what constitutes an ordainable call in the United Church of Christ for our conference.
One of the things that I really love to see happening in our conference is when local churches take a leap of faith and do, for example, our New Beginnings program. A program that is for churches who know that they're at a fork in the road and who want to spend some intentional time of discernment, deciding what that future looks like, and challenging themselves to think in new ways. We've had 4 churches go through that. We now have additional churches going through that. That takes courage and it takes faith, and I'm really proud of those churches, and I see this as a sign of new life. I also love it when I see congregations getting engaged in social justice ministries, in advocacy work, when they're on the front line working in mission, engaging in mission either in their neighborhoods or in the state or far beyond the state. With Back Bay Mission, where we've now sent 2 groups in consecutive years, and we'll be sending yet another. And in so many other ways that I see congregations stepping out beyond the 4 walls of their church building and engaging in the world in meaningful, faithful, witnessing ways. That is a sign of new life and encouragement that does my heart good every time I see it. Because for me, we cannot be the church unless we step outside of the church walls and are doing in the world the kind of ministry that Jesus exemplified for us.
Recently, our General Minister and President shared with us his understanding of what it means to be the church.
Isaiah chapter 6, verse number 8. Whom shall I send? And Isaiah responds, send me. And God says, I will send you. And the very next word is go. The church is not the church unless it's on the move. The church is not the church unless it's being called out. The church is not the church unless it responds to its being sent to. The church must be on the move, or it is not the church.
Come to church on the move. Come to annual meeting. Come to other events that are offered by the conference or offered by the church next door. Build those relationships. Get to know people. Get to know your conference staff. Invite us in to preach, to speak, and to just get to know you, because that's part of the joy of this work together.
What brings me joy is watching the people who come to camp that do not know each other evolve into friends, family.
You know what brings me joy is being involved personally in the life of the church in East Timor.
Seeing a life that's devastated by tuberculosis come to life again in a very short time.
Well, what gives me joy really is watching covenant in action.
Seeing that people are genuinely called to ministry and having that be so obvious, and celebrating with them as we ordain them or authorize them for ministry.
When I get together with the Faith Formation team or the Pilgrim Point Camp Committee, we're always thinking of some new ideas that are being brought forward so that we can help do a new thing.
The thing that gives me the most joy is when I see a church or a pastor or a lay leader taking a risk for the sake of faith and for the sake of our ministry in the world. It's all about having the faith to do that.
May God be with us as we journey out into the world with joy and fresh purpose. May our actions be guided by the love of God who created us. May our words be filled with the grace of the Christ who redeemed us. And may our ministries be fueled by the imagination of the Spirit who empowers us. Let us be the church together.